Tony wanted one more day at the beauty spa, so I am happy to be joined once more by our great friend, fill-in Frank Isola.
Have guests in here, too.
See, cheers are getting a little louder on Tuesday. We will start
warming up
with the champs being on the ropes. The Denver Nuggets are in an 0-2 hole after the Timberwolves smothered them, beat them by 26 in Denver last night. Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns each had 27 points to lead Minnesota, while Nikola Jokic finished with just 16 points, 5 for 13 shooting. Frank, do you see any way with the series moving to Minneapolis for the Nuggets to get back in this thing?
You know what? I know they're the defending champs, Mike. I don't see it. You know, they used words last night. We got punked, manhandled. Let me also add outmuscled, outclassed in this game. The Denver Nuggets, this game fell apart in that second quarter, 33-15. And if Jamal Murray, who's clearly limited, is going to play like this, they really have no chance. And they won a game last night. They were great defensively, Mike. And Rudy Gobert was with his newborn child. He wasn't even there, the guy that's probably going to be the defensive player of the year. So I'm losing a lot of faith in Denver. I'll say something else about the Nuggets. I give Mark Davis, the referee, a lot of credit from this standpoint. Michael Malone was trying to get kicked out of that game. It's as if Mark Davis said, no, you're going to stick around and suffer. And then how about what Jamal Murray did? He should have been kicked out of the game. Mike, maybe he wanted no part of the game. You're doing that in the second quarter. Well, there have been players all throughout the course of the NBA that have been frustrated during a game. You do something like that, Jamal Murray knows the rules.
Twice.
That was outrageous what he did. He actually should be suspended for what he did.
Frank, you know what? My first reaction is he should be suspended too. And listen to Richard Jefferson, who had probably a reaction closer to what's going to happen, which is going to be a huge fine and reprimand and all those things, because it doesn't seem like the commissioner's office really has the stomach for taking on players in a way that some of us would like to see. But Jamal Murray's reaction said everything. They had no real legitimate response.
None.
No athletic, no competitive response. The Denver Nuggets didn't. They're champions, and all of a sudden, they are being crushed.
Yep.
That is, Frank, I'm going to say something now. You know, I am not a prisoner of the moment. But that defense, that swarming Minnesota defense, without Rudy Gobert, is, I think, the greatest defensive effort performance I've seen against a legit team since the Johnny Bach Bulls of Jordan, Pippen, Harper, Rodman, or Jordan, Pippen, Grant, you know, whoever was. I'm serious about this. They had no shot. They have no shot. There's no solving it. I heard somebody say today, well, their best players have to come to play. What? Their best players came to play last night, and they got stomped out, choked out, and they know it. And that's why Jamal Murray did that, and Michael Malone went after Mark Davis. Mark Davis, St. Ignatius' own, very proud of him, because he could have thrown Michael Malone out. Instead, he said, no, stay here and see your team get snuffed out. And look, it's shocking. Minnesota is that good, Frank. They are. I mean, I don't see Denver climbing back in this thing at all.
You know, you used the word crush. That's what it felt like. It felt like they absolutely crushed their will last night. I mean, that was, and it also looked like a team on the last days of a dynasty. And we know that the Denver Nuggets, first of all, the series isn't over yet, and the Denver Nuggets will be back. They're going to have to retool. They're going to have to improve their bench a little bit. But it kind of had that feel to it, like an ending.
It does.
Mike, what determined this game in your eyes?
Well, look, the guy you see that has the ball in that frame, Tyrese Halliburton, who I know I voted like third team All-NBA and had a great first half of the season, and has been plagued by a hamstring issue, and he doesn't talk about it, doesn't make an excuse. Good for him, terrific player, but he had no game.
No.
He had no game. That hurts him. If he has a C- game, Indy wins that game. The Pacers win that game. But Frank, the optics of this are terrible. And Jalen Brunson, my God. I mean, he's just great all the time now, or almost all the time. But those calls leave a stench to that game. And this is why the NBA, more than any league, faces conversation, no matter how insane it may sound, about conspiracies. And I don't think there was any. Zach Zarba's too good an official. The guys in that crew are too good. I don't think there's any intent, but that moving screen call's awful.
I agree.
And let me just say this, right? Again, those guys are too good. As a kid of the Midwest, And I'm suspicious all the time about the lifting of teams in the East and West, and I've been that way all my life. And people, yes, in the flyover states may be guilty of that. This is bad for optics, all right? It just is. Those calls are inexcusably bad. The Pacers got hosed.
Yeah.
Now, the league will now send out its minions to call people and say, oh, please don't. Sorry, you got to be accountable for this. That is inexcusable. That illegal screen. You and I have talked to players, coaches, executives all day today. Nobody says anything but that call can be made 40 times a game. It shouldn't be made.
And I know bad calls get made all the time. But the Aaron Nesmith, the kickball when he deflected with his hand, and then, of course, that's a play that they can't review. Why don't we make the playoffs, since the games are a little bit more important, let's make plays like that reviewable in the final 2 minutes of a game. That is a huge play. The game is tied, Mike. That would have been a transition opportunity for Indiana in a tie game. Instead, Dante DiVincenzo had a great second half, knocks down a three, and then Indiana's chasing the final minute of the game. I hated the call on the screen, but also two players you mentioned, Jalen Brunson with 21 points in that fourth quarter, 21 of the 39 that the Knicks scored. And you mentioned Tyrese Halliburton. I felt like he wanted no part of that game offensively in the fourth quarter. He had two miserable turnovers.
Terrible turnovers.
In the final 4 minutes. Turnovers that for an all-star player at this level, you simply cannot have. So I get it. Indiana, they're all ticked off, but they're playing at Madison Square Garden. The conspiracies are going to start up. But they had that game, and Tyrese Halliburton's their best player. He made two mistakes that you cannot make, especially at this level.
Agreed. And by the way, kudos to Rick Carlisle for taking the high road.
Yeah.
He didn't have to.
He didn't have to.
Okay? Once again, let me be plain about this. Jalen Brunson and Dante DiVincenzo, they are up to the moment. Every game they roll the ball out. Those guys are up to the moment. There's nothing to be said anti-Knicks about last night. There's no criticism, none. But the circumstances and the optics of having a playoff game in Madison Square Garden, and oh, wait, the Knicks get the benefit of just about every call all night, including hand of God is what I'm going to call that alleged kickball.
It's been 20 years of nothing, Mike. Cut the Knicks some slack here. They finally had to get a break, and they got one in the
slack
fourth
like
quarter.
that.
Jimmy Butler's future with the Heat sounds blank.
Well, of course, Frank, we get this story because Pat Riley sat before a microphone and responding to Jimmy Butler's comments about other teams and play and what might have happened if he'd been on the court. Pat Riley just essentially said, I don't want to hear it. You weren't out there, so just be quiet. Stop talking. And then he came back and he talked about, who's there and playing with who's there. And Jimmy Butler, of course, got injured. And we saw him suffer kind of a bad injury. So I was a little surprised that Riles went after him. But when Riles says this stuff, and he says it publicly, it ain't good, and he is measured, and he's Pat Riley. So my word is over, okay? Jimmy Butler's time in Miami is going to be over. They can trade him. I know he's got 2 more years of the contract, like a year, and then a player option year. Other teams will want Jimmy Butler. It just seems like his time in Miami is over, if we're reading this situation correctly.
Yeah, I think you're right. You said over. I'm going to say cooked on this one. And, there are certain dates on the NBA calendar which stick out. Opening night, the Christmas Day games, the trade deadline, start of the playoffs. You know what another one is? The Pat Riley end of the year State of the Miami Heat address. Because he always delivers the goods. And he told Jimmy Butler, just shut your mouth on something like this. And I get it. Jimmy Butler plays this role where he's just trolling people. And he's talking about the Celtics and the New York Knicks and Josh Hart. It's all adorable when your team is winning. When you call yourself Playoff Jimmy and you're not available for the playoffs, suddenly it doesn't hit the right chord with Pat Riley. Here's the other thing about Playoff Jimmy. Since he joined the Heat, 58 regular season games, 52, 57, 64, and 60. I think what Pat Riley's thinking, we need you to be regular season, Jimmy. So maybe we can get a top 4 seed, get home court advantage, give ourselves an easier path to advance through the playoffs. That's why I think with Jimmy Butler, the injury history, I think it's coming to an end.
Yeah, Frank, as well as that has gone in the postseason multiple times, it seems like the sort of marriage is just moved on, like it's time for it to be over. That's what it sounds like. What's next?
The Clippers would be blank to stick with Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and James Harden.
Well, we could go just ill-advised, which is what I think, but my word will be starstruck. That's what it is. And Steve Ballmer's in a tough place. The owner of that team, who's one of the richest men in the world, he's building this. It's already like 3/4 up. I can't wait to see it, Frank. The Intuit Dome in L.A., and he's got to fill it. And it's not the Lakers. The Clippers still aren't the Lakers. So they've already signed Kawhi Leonard to a crazy amount of money. But to give Harden and Paul George that amount of money, those guys aren't going to threaten anybody. Talk about people who aren't available. Some or all of them aren't available or aren't up to the playoffs. Just aren't up to it. Not like the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Boston Celtics and others, the Knicks. So starstruck, but I don't think it's going to work. How about you?
You know what? I'm going to go with short side. I agree with a lot of things you're saying. You mentioned the Intuit Dome, the state-of-the-art facility they're going to move into. That's going to sell itself over the next couple of years. So that's going to draw fans to the Clippers. So why not try to make trades here? Trade guys off. Let's remember, they traded Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and 5 first-round picks, the right to swap 2 other picks for Paul George. That's coming back to haunt them. And, Mike, look all through the playoffs. Steph Curry's done. Kevin Durant is out. LeBron James is out. Damian Lillard, Giannis Antetokounmpo out. All the older players are gone. It's these upstart teams. And look at the Clippers. They don't look like an upstart team. It's time to cut your losses now. And the other problem with Kawhi Leonard, who's a brilliant player, every year, Mike, when it comes to the playoffs, he never finishes the season on the court. And you look at what Masai Ujiri did in Toronto, give him credit. That was a great trade. He had him for 1 year. They won a championship. Ever since then, Kawhi is not available. I know they can't trade him for a while, until July, but I would look to do something like that.
I would look to do so. I wouldn't have any of them. Start over. By the way, that's going to be the new model. You don't need this whole big three, and it's over.
I know.
Find some good young players and have some draft capital and build that way.